This is the all-new, completely overhauled Porsche Macan EV Turbo. Out went the combustion engine, out went the gearbox, and in came a couple of electric motors and a battery pack. And some people aren't best pleased. Just before we get into that and the why, let me tell you a little bit about the car in question.
This is one of 4 models available on the new EV range. You can have a standard rear-wheel drive version in the Macan. There's also a Macan 4 available, which is all-wheel drive, a Macan 4S, which is a more powerful all-wheel drive, and what we have here, the Turbo, aka the range topper.
The Turbo has 2 electric motors, 1 on each axle. It develops 584 brake horsepower and an additional 55 brake horsepower at launch control. That power, that performance for me is great, but it isn't necessarily on the forefront of what's important to the average Macan driver. However, I will concede its appeal if you're a 911 customer who perhaps needs a little bit more practicality. Said drivers should also be satisfied with a 0 to 62 mile an hour time of just 3.3 seconds, and it can continue all the way up to the dizzy heights of 162 mile an hour with the sure-footedness that you can expect from an all-wheel drive SUV, which also has all-wheel steering. Quick disclaimer, the UK has done what the UK does very well and delivered us 4 seasons over 1 weekend, so I apologise for the contrast in the filming. There's snow, there's rain, there's sunshine, we have it all. It has a very impressive 100 kilowatt hour battery on board, of which 95 kilowatt hours are usable. With the options that this particular one has, and it being the Turbo, Porsche claim a range of 340 miles. This particular press car does have a few options, including the 22-inch upgraded alloy wheels, the extended leather, a tow bar, the Matrix LED headlights, which I absolutely adore, rear axle steering, adaptive cruise, and the surround view cameras. This being the Turbo trim, some of the standard equipment include the all-wheel drive system, the air suspension, heated seats, smartphone integration package, as well as the Bose surround sound system. £108,000 worth of car. So technically speaking, this is the cheapest Porsche that money can buy, which adorns the Turbo logo. All iterations of the Macan get the same 480 litre boot. However, this being the Turbo, you do lose that underfloor storage area because of the Bose subwoofer, which for me is a fair trade-off. And of course, we can't forget about the front.
As first impressions go for the look of the car, I much prefer the front, and I have a theory as to why. Familiarity. It's not a far cry from the model it replaces. Both had lighting units on the bonnet, and where the grille would be on the previous generation, the new one now houses the main beams. From the side, it's a similar silhouette. As for the rear, I'm going to let it grow on me. The rear of the original Macan still looks more aggressive to me, which I prefer. The Macan EV has a maximum charging ability of 270 kilowatts. So, if and when you do have access to a rapid charger, you can expect a fill up of 80% in as little as 21 minutes from 10%. We popped into a grid serve, which is an electric forecourt in Stevenage, for a quick top up. As I only had about 15 minutes, it was a good test to see how quickly I could top up before heading back on the road. I managed to get the charger up to about half of the power available, but still managed to get almost 24 kilowatt hours of energy in 10 minutes. The next day, I also had a go at the Ionity charger, where I used the Porsche Charge Card, a card that allows the billing process to be a little bit more streamlined and top the Macan up.
With this being a brand new electric car, there is of course an app to go along with it. So whilst it's charging, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Porsche app. My favourite feature is the preheating and the pre-cooling. Now, one of the benefits of this is that if the car's plugged in at your home or at a charge point like this, it means that you can preheat or pre-cool the car. So just when you're about to drive off, you can still drive away having 100% charge. One of the other features is the map section, where you can find, locate and navigate to your nearest charge points. Not only can you see where they are, but it tells you how many slots are free, as well as the power available. And whilst we're on the subject of chargers and charging,
if you're in the market for an EV like the Macan or a plug-in hybrid like the Range Rover Sport we tested at Christmas, then there's one thing you need to have in place before you step foot into a showroom.
Meet the UK's most award-winning home charger brand of 2024. Andersen are a design-led British home wallbox charger manufacturer based right here in the UK, rated best for quality by What Car's Home EV Charge Point Review. With 13 stunning metal colours included in the price of just £995, you'll find a match for any style. If you'd like something unique, their custom palette offers unlimited color combinations, letting you match your charger to your car, house, or personal flair. Plus, it's the only charger on the market that has a fully integrated cable that you can stow away when not in use, so no more stuffing your wet cables into your boot or frunk. Backed by a market-leading 7-year warranty and installed by Andersen's in-house team, a which trusted trader, you're guaranteed peace of mind. However, if you prefer to purchase the unit alone and have your own installer, that's fine too. This is the ultimate in design, quality, and convenience. Now, if you'd like any additional information on their products or services, I've left their contact details in the description box down below. Thank you to Andersen for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the road test. Cars can be, and ones with this particular crest on their bonnet are emotive products. They are so much more than just a car. If you believe a Porsche is just for transportation, well, that's like saying intercourse is only for reproduction. And consequently, it happens to be a brand that many people aspire to. They save their hard-earned money or they chase that promotion in the hope that one day they can have their very own Porsche. It has all the qualities that you would want and expect in an SUV, so great comfort levels, all-weather capability, and overall refinement. Not only that, but have the driver pedigree that our heart desires, with great blend of power, poise, and good fun. Now, I know some will be disappointed and some may not want to hear it, and some may be angry at the fact that the Macan is now an EV. However, the Macan EV is still all those things. I have some experience in the car that this model replaces, and when I first got behind the wheel of one, I thought that it would just be like any other SUV. I thought it'd be like our GLC, soft, supple, wallowy, mid-size SUV. And when I finally got to drive it, it had really heavy steering compared to what I was expecting and what I was used to. And the only time it rewarded you was when you actually drove it hard and fast. And in an SUV, that didn't resonate with me immediately. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it's trying to be a 911 SUV almost. Then it started making sense, which dovetails to my next point. If you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. My name's Gok, and I set this YouTube channel up somewhat accidentally, actually. I was working in the automotive trade and I had a passion for making videos. Those two worlds collided and then the channel was born. So why am I telling you this? Because I promised myself that I would do things differently, be it the visuals, the storyline, where I go with the car, what I do. It's never been my style to drone on about 0 to 60 mile an hour time, Sports Plus, and just generally get too technical. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just not my style. So staying true to my identity, I thought, what can I do with the Macan, a car that I've never featured before and got very limited time in? I know, why don't I head over to a Macan forum, speak to like-minded people, speak to owners, ex-owners, potential owners, and really find out what they want to know. Naturally, they're going to have questions, they're going to have curiosities and concerns about the Macan. So I thought I could address those in the video. Well, the internet didn't disappoint. Shortly after registering to the forum, I put up my first post. Brief introduction, who I am, what I do, what I'm trying to achieve. And it wasn't long until the first comment came in. The tone was set. This man said I wouldn't be at this forum if I had a successful platform. It's going to depreciate like a falling rock. It's not really a topic that I like to go into in car reviews because, yes, cars depreciate. It's time sensitive. It just depends on market conditions, and really it has no bearing on the product itself, because by that logic, Taycans should be terrible cars. You and I both know they're far from it. I'm not quite sure who the we are, but one could only assume some sort of cool club that this person's a member of. Anyway, he goes on to say that I'm a newbie and basically says I won't know what I'm talking about. It got me thinking, maybe it's me. So I headed over to Sam's video on the very same car on Seen Through Glass and read his comments, and they were very much in the same vein. Then I went to a more seasoned pro than myself, you know, being a newbie and all, to Harry's video in Harry's garage. Again, same story there. Unbeknown to them, they were actually giving me some ideas. So in this video, I decided to address them. This person goes on to say, in fact, if the roads become filled with electric vehicles like this, they will eventually be damaged by the cars and bridges might have to be reinforced to sustain the weight. Well, joke's on you. Our roads are already shit and bridges aren't collapsing. People are disgusted by the Macan. What 2, maybe 3 words would you use to describe it?
I love it. It looks really sexy. It's a beast.
It is a beast.
Yeah.
This may be a bit of a leading question, but are you disgusted by it at all?
No.
Excellent. Thank you very much. What do you think about it?
I really like it. I think it looks like a really cool bit of kit, to be honest with you, yeah.
Great. Are you disgusted with it at all?
Disgusted? No, not at all.
Great. Can I ask why you say that?
Why? Have one. And it is the bollocks.
What do you think about the new Macan?
Love the look, love the colour.
And are you disgusted by it?
No, not at all, no.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm not allowed to share my views and opinions on a car that I don't own, but they can share their hatred towards an EV which they've never owned. Right. And it went on and on about the weight, the reasons for going electric, the depreciation, the outrage. It did not let up. Some took the liberty to write paragraphs about why they won't be buying an EV. It started to feel like everyone was just taking their anger out at me. Those points that are raised in that thread aren't without merit. These are just my first impressions, my thoughts, my opinions, things that I like, things that I don't like, which is a topic I'm going to get into in just a little bit. My experience in the Macan in a few days may be different to someone who ends up owning one. Buying one for the purpose of reviewing it, as this person suggested that I do, and it'd be the only way that take me seriously, isn't a viable option. Unless, of course, if 50,000 of you want to super thank me a few quid or dollars if you're in the States, then maybe. No? Didn't think so. However, if you do want to hit that subscribe button, that'll help the channel grow to a successful platform. It's important to remember that reviews are often as opinionated as they are factual. Electric cars in some areas are failing. However, I don't think it's as much to do with the product as some will lead you to believe. After all, technology is still evolving, it's still maturing. It would be absolutely crazy to say that EVs aren't flawed in some ways. I mean, what car isn't, regardless of fuel type? And when we think about electricity as a fuel type and not necessarily the main feature of the car in question, the Macan starts to make a lot more sense. Put someone who's maybe open-minded but undecided about EVs in this car, and I bet you they'll appreciate the things that put the badge on the nose before they notice the lithium in the floor. Flaws that you find in an EV are true of any EV. And I'm pleased to report there's nothing exclusively flawed about the Macan. Now, that's not to say that I don't have dislikes. Speaking of which, we start with the key. It's made of plastic, which isn't my gripe. I don't have a real issue with that because I think you can have them custom made to match the color of your car as well. But anyway, for me, it's more to do with the location of the button. So right at the top, you've got your frunk, then the doors, and then your boot. And when the key's in your pocket, you can't feel where the door unlocking button is because there's no raised ridges or there's no grooves for you to feel where the button is. So you have to physically look and then press it. Naturally, your finger or your thumb goes right to the end where there's a slight little ridge and it sits comfortably there. And you think that's where it's going to be, but that's your frunk. Secondly, it's this panel down here, which is gloss piano black. I've had the car for 24 hours, it's already covered in dust and fingerprints. Thirdly, it's the location of the gear selector. It's here in the Taycan, it's here in the Cayenne. For me, it's just not intuitive. It should live down here somewhere. Maybe move the volume knob to the left and just place it down there. I think that's where everyone wants it to be. At the very least, at this price point, please put in a fixed glass roof. In terms of what I love about the new Macan, I love the way this thing looks. Normally, when a new car launches and there's been a previous model, there's always that head scratching moment where you're a little bit unsure and you kind of go, okay, I'm going to allow it to grow on me. Whereas this, for me, was an instant hit, spot on. Secondly, the infotainment system has had some updates. It feels a little bit slicker. It feels simpler to use, but there's still a lot of customization. There's a lot to look through in the menu systems to make sure everything is just how you like. Another thing, the guys at Porsche Press have programmed the shortcut key on the steering wheel to disable the bongs for exceeding speed limits, which is very handy. And in the adaptive cruise stalk down here, there's another button which you press and hold, and you can disable the lane changing warning thing, which may work on the motorway, may work in some cities, but doesn't work on country roads. Just that's going off. Seating position is another one. Your arms reach away from everything. You're sitting very much in the car. You feel cocooned. You feel like you're part of a cockpit, and you just feel like you're an integral part of the car, of the driving experience.
A special mention also to the couple of USB Type-C ports that live down at the bottom of the center console, which have a clever little tunnel where you can feed the cable through to keep the console clutter-free.
In terms of the driving dynamics, I'm cruising at 70 miles an hour at the moment, and it just feels effortless. There's plenty of power and torque to carry you through the most treacherous weather conditions, and overtaking cars has never been so easy. But something I've noticed with this steering, I'm currently doing 70 miles an hour, and I half expect the steering to just settle down a little bit. So you have a little bit more give before the car actually does anything, but it doesn't, or it hasn't. And I can't obviously go much more than 70 miles an hour, but the smallest little inputs into the steering, the car still sort of jitters along on the motorway. It feels as if I was to sneeze, I may find myself in a different lane. When you're throwing it around in tight, twisty country roads, it's spot on. You can place it exactly where you want to. I prefer my SUVs to be a bit bigger. I prefer the class of your Cayennes, your GLEs and your Range Rover Sports, for example. Not as big as like GLSs and the full fat Range Rover, but this is very difficult to ignore. Sure, it hasn't got the same levels of practicality as those aforementioned SUVs, but if you want to go on a spirited drive, this will put a smile on your face. If you want to take your whole family on a long weekend, there's just about enough space in here. If you want to use it every day, it's so easy to drive. The dimensions, the visibility, the feel, the tech, everything is just right. And you can draw some similarities in terms of refinement, the feel, the tautness, the togetherness of everything to that of a Taycan. So a few of the things which have stood out to me during my time with the Macan are, firstly, its simplicity, and secondly, the lack of EV feel. And I'll explain what I mean. So firstly, the simplicity is that, take the steering wheel for example, there's no paddle shifts, and I'll explain what I mean by that again in a bit. And there's only one dial in the form of drive mode. Here we have normal, off-road, sport and sport plus. I doubt many people are going to take this variant off-road. However, when you're going through some tricky grounds, you know, muds, ice, sleet, rain, whatever the case may be, you literally just turn a dial and you're in off-road mode. It'll raise the suspension, it'll do what it needs to do to make sure that you've got maximum grip and maximum stability. And then you've got your sport and then sport plus, which are self-explanatory. And what I mean by the lack of EV feel is that anytime that I've had an EV on loan, there's been really strong recuperation. So when you lift your foot off the accelerator, the car starts its recuperation in form of braking. Whereas in this, take my foot off the accelerator and it just coasts in the exact same way that your petrol or your diesel car would. There is recuperation, but it's not invasive in the same way a Tesla is, for example. And in this, you don't get the paddle shifters that you would get in EQE, for example, where you can play around with the intensity of the recuperation. In this, it's either on or off. And even when it's on, you barely feel it. It shouldn't really be news to anyone that Porsche don't just sell cars. They sell the emotion, they sell the feeling you get when you buy your first Porsche, the feeling that you get when you drive your first Porsche. Park it and look back at it, or peek out your window and see it parked on your driveway. And that is why you buy a Macan as opposed to a BMW iX3 or a Skoda Enyaq. If you own a petrol Macan and you're open to the idea of moving over to a electric version of the Macan, then good news, you're probably really going to enjoy this new one. If, however, you own a petrol Macan and you're angry and upset about it now being EV, well, I don't think there's anything I or anyone else can say or do that's going to change your mind. And for that, I'm sorry, but this car that you were probably never going to buy anyway, maybe it just isn't for you. Just before we wrap up, some range results. Right, so for this we need to go into our trip computer. So total trip, here we go. So we've done 409.1 miles since I took delivery of this car, and I have consumed 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour. So as you guys saw, we drove the Macan in all sorts of different conditions: rain, sleet, snow, bit of town, bit of motorway, and the back roads in Hertfordshire. Rather than me delivering I had 100% and this is how many miles I achieved on a full charge, for example, we're going to base it off the average consumption given to us by the trip computer. So thank you to Ken, I now know how to do this. Out of the 100 kilowatt hour battery, 95 of which were available, so we do 95 times the 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour equals 209. So that is what we've averaged over a 409.1 mile distance.
So, how would I summarise this car?
Maybe I can't sit here and tell you that this is an improvement over the last car, though I suspect it is, and maybe Porsche have and will alienate some of their existing Macan customers. Can this latest iteration carry the torch for the next decade? I think Macan. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for taking the time out to watch it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you want to find out more about what the guys at Rush Magazine do, I'll link their website down below in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. You EasyJet. EasyJet? EasyJet. It's about -3. I mean, talk about doing things differently.